Hello everyone. Last time we took a look at how the Alliance of Lordaeron was formed and how Turalyon found his faith in the light and became the commander of the Alliance. What we haven't explored yet is the relation with Alleria, and that's because most of this is explained in the next book called Beyond the Dark Portal, which takes place 2 years after they've defeated Doomhammer and closed the Dark Portal. As I said before, Turalyon was head over heels when he first saw Alleria, but she took a little bit longer to warm up to him. Throughout their battles they of course grew closer, and she was shocked by her own feelings when it came to Turalyon. For example, when they found out that the Horde was moving on to Quel'Thalas, she was desperate to go and help. She thought that the Alliance army was moving way too slow, so she wanted to take her rangers and go on ahead. Turalyon ordered her to stay behind because if she would go by herself, she would be caught, and that would not do anyone good. She heard that he was about to say something else and she felt a sudden urge of joy inside her chest, and this was just shocking to her. Man, high elves and humans normally don't form relations. They had a war to fight though, so she couldn't worry about that right now, but she did follow his command, and that was like the little seed of love slowly growing. At one point, Alleria and her rangers returned from a scouting mission, and I asked around on the forums what moment this exactly was. I'm told that it was during the Horde invasion of Quel'Thalas, before the dragons attacked and they made their way to Lordaeron, but I'm not entirely sure. Either way, she found out that although her kingdom managed to survive the Horde invasion, they did lose several in the battle. The Horde had cut their way through Quel'Thalas, and Alleria had lost no fewer than 18 of her kin. Cousins, aunts, uncles, nephews, and even her little brother, Lirath Windrunner. Devastated by this loss, she made her way to Turalyon in his tent, soaking wet from the rain and trying to seek comfort. How long had he wanted this? Dreamed of it. He'd realized early on that he'd fallen head over heels in love with Alleria, but until recently he'd never expected the emotion to be returned. Over the last few weeks, however, it seemed to him she had sought out his company, had contrived to touch him more often, though still in a teasing manner. And now she told him that she was cold. So cold. She whispered to him, Vendelo Eranu, which at the time Turalyon didn't know what it meant, but later he had it translated and it means help me forget. He helped her out of her wet clothes and drew the fur about them both, and at that moment they were warm. What you would expect to happen after that is that they would live happily ever after. Instead, the next day Turalyon found out exactly what happened to Alleria and the rangers, and he tried to talk to her after their night together. She shrugged away as if nothing happened, as if they weren't even friends before all of that. That broke his heart, man, but he pushed it aside because he had an army to lead. But he knew that he would always love Alleria. From that moment on, Alleria swore that she would avenge her family. Revenge was all that mattered to her, and after the war she set out to kill every son of an orc she could find. It worried Turalyon, but he had to attend to his duties as captain of the Alliance, and the Alliance had plenty of work to do. Once again, I want to keep the story focused on these two, so it's a need-to-know basis. The Alliance has been busy with rebuilding Stormwinds, building internment camps for the captured orcs, and they built Khadgar Keep in the Blasted Lands to keep an eye on the portal. Even though Khadgar destroyed it, they could still feel a rift connecting both worlds, so they were keeping an eye on it just in case. And it's good that they did, because on the other side, Ner'zhul was contacted by Theron Gornfiend, who had a plan of reopening the Dark Portal. His plan was not to try and reconquer Azeroth, instead he wanted to retrieve several artifacts to create more portals to different worlds. Ner'zhul got behind the plan, and they also got Grom Hellscream on board, who would get the remaining clans to work with them and get them the Skull of Gul'dan. This skull had somehow made its way from the Tomb of Sargeras all the way back to Draenor, and they needed its power to reopen the portal to Azeroth. And so they did, and the reopening didn't happen instantly, so the Alliance was aware of it and they sent troops to stop them. Unfortunately, most of the troops were rookies, and the Horde came in under a magical blanket of darkness. With the element of surprise on their side and the unexperienced Alliance troops, Grom Hellscream and the Horde quickly made short work of the Alliance troops, and they rebuilt the portal on the side of Azeroth. Theron, Gornfiend and some of the others went out to retrieve the artifacts, and Grom Hellscream and the Horde kept the Alliance troops busy at Khadgar Keep. These artifacts were the Scepter of Sargeras, the Eye of Dalaran, and the Book of Medivh. To speed up their process, they tried to enlist the aid of the Horde, who still survived on Azeroth and who still had the Red Dragons under their control. These orcs were led by Rend Blackhand, and he didn't care about Ner'zhul and his plan, and he was happy to leave the rest of the Horde to their fate so that he could pick up the pieces after they were done. It was Deathwing who then came to Theron Gornfiend and offered the aid of his Black Dragon children. In return, he wanted the Horde to take his axe with them back to Draenor. The idea of a new planet to conquer was too much to resist, so they made their pact. They retrieved the items with the help of Deathwing, and they made their way back to the portal, back to Draenor, to start and open up portals to new worlds. In the meantime, the Alliance didn't just sit on their hands. Alleria took great pleasure in killing as many orcs as she could, even to the point that the others were starting to worry about her and her lust for vengeance. They've also been trying to figure out what the Horde is up to, and after torturing a few orcs with a little bit of magic and holy light, they eventually learn of Ner'zhul's plans for conquering other worlds. After learning this, Turalyon looks deep inside himself, and the holy light assures him that it will be with him even on other planets. Some of the men came forward with the idea of just letting the orcs go as long as Azeroth is left alone, but Turalyon tells them that they need to stop the Horde, that it ends with Azeroth and that no other planet or life should suffer as they did. Alleria adds to this by saying that if they let the Horde go, there's nothing stopping them from coming back even bigger and stronger than the first time they invaded. Turalyon was kinda disappointed that she didn't just do it out of the goodness of her own heart, but it seemed Alleria was still consumed with hatred. And so they got ready for the next day, where they would leave the world behind for the unknown planet of the orcs. Before they took off, Alleria pulled in her long trusted friend Verana, and she told her to bring a message to her sisters and her parents. Tell them I took the fight to the orcs' own world, to avenge Quel'Thalas and to keep our people safe from future attacks. Tell them I went to try to save other worlds as well. Others who will, I pray, never know the pain of what we underwent. Tell them I chose to do this of my own free will, and that whatever happens to me, my heart is with them. Together with that message, she also gave 2 necklaces, one for each of her sisters, while she kept the third one for herself. Turalyon told his generals to tell the troops the following. Each of you, tell your units one more time that this is a volunteer expedition. I'll not force any soldier to cross worlds if he does not wish to. And with that said, they were off. And it wasn't just Turalyon and Alleria that went through, they also had Khadgar, Curdun Wildhammer and Medivh Trollbane, the 5 heroes who each received a statue in front of Stormwind. Upon reaching Draenor, they saw the devastation of the land, and it sickened Alleria what the orcs had done with the planet. Being a high elf, a child of the forest, seeing the red dry land of Draenor was really quite a shock. Also, the pathway made of the bones of the Draenei was not a pleasant sight. They build up Honorhold, and although the Horde attacks them daily, they don't come with their full force. That's because Ner'zhul has bigger plans, and he just wants the Alliance to stay busy as he works on his plans to create all these portals. Strangely enough, he doesn't instantly create all these portals, so Khadgar uses his time to figure out what Ner'zhul is waiting for. He eventually finds out that Ner'zhul is waiting for the stars and the planets to be in the right alignment, and as they make plans to stop him, Turalyon and Alleria get in a heated discussion. Turalyon wants someone to stay behind to defend Honorhold, and Alleria, her reckless search for revenge, makes him believe that she will eventually kill herself because of it. That's why he tells her to stay behind, and she's not having it. And this is the moment where all the tension between them finally breaks out and they talk it out. Alleria explains that she couldn't grieve for her people, because by doing so would mean having to accept the reality of them really being gone. So instead she decided to go after their murderers, and for a while it kept the pain away. She tells Turalyon that she can't stay behind. She won't stay behind and see another person she loves die. And that moment the music plays and the romantic things happen, and from that point on it was all good. Alleria allowed herself to grieve, and she still hated the orcs, but she would no longer go in with a blind lust for vengeance. So Turalyon felt safe enough to let her come with them, and they vowed to never leave each other behind. Romance, l'amour. Gotta love it, man. So yeah, from that moment on, it was them against the world. Now there was just the problem of stopping Ner'zhul and Deathwing. Khadgar would need the Book of Medivh and the Skull of Gul'dan to close the Dark Portal. He was able to sense the magical items, and he found out that they had split up. Deathwing in the meantime had met with Ner'zhul, and he requested the Skull of Gul'dan. Reluctantly, Ner'zhul gave it up, and he made his way to the Black Temple, which was the best location to cast his spell. Because the items had split up, the group also had to split up, and it was Khadgar, Alleria and Turalyon who followed the trail of Deathwing, and the trail led them to the Blade's Edge Mountains. There, together with Gruul the Dragon Slayer, they took on the Black Dragonflight, and they smashed Deathwing his eggs. They would have perished that day by the hands of Deathwing was it not for Khadgar, who was smart enough to use his magic on the metal plates that were keeping Deathwing together. This forced him to retreat, and he was nice enough to leave the Skull of Gul'dan behind. In the meantime, Ner'zhul was chased by the others, but he managed to make his way back to the Black Temple, so they quickly followed after him. In front of the Black Temple, there Terran Gormfiend awaited Turalyon, and he cast a spell on him that made him self-doubt about his own abilities. The dark tendrils spread across his body, entered his nose and eyes, and it made him see horrific visions of his friends dying and him failing as a leader. It was the memory of Alleria that gave him the courage and faith to fight back the darkness, and the light shined even brighter out of him. He managed to free himself of Gormfiend's spell way sooner than Gormfiend expected, and in the end he ripped Gormfiend's body apart. The soul of Gormfiend managed to escape. With the last defense of Ner'zhul destroyed, they made their way to the top of the temple, but not before Ner'zhul managed to open several dimensional rifts to several other worlds. Ner'zhul forced the orcs to follow him through the rifts to a planet unknown, which he believed to be the Promised Land. Now with all these portals open, Draenor became very unstable, and Khadgar realized that the planet would destroy itself. They needed to close the dark portal between Azeroth and Draenor, otherwise Azeroth would suffer the same fate. They had no time to spare though, so this meant that they had to say goodbye to their home world forever. And so, Khadgar used the Book of Medivh and the Skull of Gul'dan to close the portal forever. With his mission done, he quickly gave the items to a Wildhammer dwarf and told him to get them to Dalaran. The dwarf quickly made his way through the portal as it was closing, and our hero stayed behind for the sake of Azeroth. Because at that point the orcs realized what was happening to Draenor, and they were trying to go through the dark portal as it was closing, and they had to keep the orcs on the planet, otherwise they would spread into Azeroth and misery would follow. Draenor started to break down, patches of earth started to float up, the magic Ner'zhul unleashed when he opened the portals was starting to take its toll on the world. Our heroes would have probably died that day, was it not for a rift to an unknown world that opened up near them. They stepped through it not knowing where it would lead them, and they waited out the storm as Khadgar shielded them. When it seemed like Draenor was stable again, they went back and found the entire planet changed. It looked like we all know it today, the world of Outland. They made a way to Honorhold and finish the job they started, fight the Horde so they don't try to do something like this ever again. This world will be what we choose to make of it. And that's where the story of Beyond the Dark Portal ends. These heroes of the Alliance sacrificed everything they knew so that Azeroth would be able to survive another day. They expected the Dark Portal to be closed forever, but as we all know, this would not be the case. In the Burning Crusade, we got the opportunity of going to Outland ourselves, and everyone is accounted for except for Turalyon and Alleria. Which brings us back to the loading screen tip. Nobody has seen Alleria or Turalyon in years. Not even Khadgar can tell you where they are right now, and that all got the speculation going in the first place. What happened to them? What we do learn with the Burning Crusade is that Alleria and Turalyon had a son named Arathor the Redeemer, and funny enough there's no mention of him in either one of these novels. There's a theory that Alleria never told Turalyon that she was pregnant and that she left her child in the care of someone else. But I personally think he just got added in the Burning Crusade and they messed up with the timeline. Wouldn't be the first time. Either way, he is the son of them both and he made his way to Outland to find his father. He tells you the following. I was only an infant when my father was deployed to this wasteland. All that I have ever known of him is what others have told me. Do your dreams change? Mine do not. I have one dream. A crimson skyline envelops me as legion numbering beyond comprehension battle in the distance. I kneel before the body of a man, presumably my father, and weep. As he is gasping for air, his body crushed, he whispers something. Despite every effort, I am unable to hear what he's trying to tell me. This next bit is all speculation, so don't take this as set in stone. So this dream, the Legion, Crimson Sky, Outland full of rifts to different worlds. If I had to make a guess, I would say that Alleria and Turalyon made their way to a different planet to take the battle to the Burning Legion. Something I expect that we will do as well, possibly in the next expansion. It could also mean that they will return to Outland and that they will revamp the old world and let the story play out on that area. But I personally prefer the first option of traveling through space to new planets, would be so much cooler. Now the first question, say that we do see these heroes return in some form, what will their allegiance be? The Alliance fanboy inside of me screams that they will be Alliance true and true, but it's not as simple as that, not anymore. The Horde that first invaded Azeroth, although they're still orcs in the current Horde, overall it's changed. It's changed with Thrall, and it's not the same Horde as we knew it back then. Remember that Turalyon did not kill Doomhammer, he knocked him out. He has righteous revenge in him and he isn't afraid to smite those that go against the way of the light. He killed many orcs of the first Horde and some of those orcs are still present in the current Horde as I just said, but that doesn't mean that the Horde hasn't changed. Alleria was full of vengeance for what happened to Quel'Thalas and she took the fight to the orcs. She didn't have the compassion that Turalyon had, but in the meantime one of her sisters is part of the Horde. Around 90% of her people were killed when Arthas, Prince of Lordaeron, turned evil and the High Elves who remained in Quel'Thalas started to call themselves Blood Elves. These Blood Elves are now being led by Lor'themar, who was a brother in arms of her, and he is now also part of the Horde. It's very possible that they will be neutral, just like they did with Khadgar, and hell, even with Cenarius, who was killed by orcs, so anything is possible. What I find way more interesting besides their allegiance is what is going to happen when they introduce them back to the world. Just imagine all the events they missed. They missed literally everything from Warcraft 3 to the expansion as we know it today. I mean, Doomhammer escaped his prison and he helped Thrall with rebuilding the current Horde.
For Doomhammer!
Sylvanas was slain by Prince Arthas. Now Sylvanas is a Forsaken and part of the Horde, and bringing her the necklace that Alleria gave her is one of the few things that will make her feel again. Verisa, her husband Ronan, got killed with the bombing of Faramore. Burning Legion was pushed back, Thrall teamed up with the Aspects, Garrosh came to power, Deathwing been defeated. Every single event they missed out on it, so how will they respond? It's like defrosting a caveman, and I can't wait to find out how they'll be introduced and what the reaction is going to be. You would almost imagine that if they look upon the mess that we made of the world, that they will just turn around and go back to wherever they came from. And that brings me to the end of my video. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I hope it's a little bit more clear why this tip can mean so much for the future of the story. Subscribe if you like my videos, and until next time guys, see ya!